Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. Not just any old episode, another live episode here with myself, James Haskell, my co-host, Glenn Martin, and DK running the show in the background. We are so glad to be here with you guys and excited to talk about the draft presser today, otherwise known as, Glenn?
The Liars Luncheon.
That's right. A lot of meat on the bone in this
Yeah,
conversation,
buddy.
huh, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, look, they are always careful, of course, of what they say and what they don't say. But if you read between the lines, you can certainly get some bits of information out of these guys. I mean, they of course are always careful, but I think we got some info out of this
100%.
luncheon.
Like, I think you would agree with me that some of the things I focus on are more about the things that Eric DeCosta decides to skirt around
Mm-hmm.
and the way that he says things. Because you're right, he'll give a little, but certainly there's a lot. It's like, pulling the tail of a giant lizard, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's in the cave and you think it's a little tiny lizard, and then you're like, oh gosh, this big monster turns around, right? So like, he'll give you a little bit, but
Yeah.
you gotta sort of speculate to know how much is left there and how much he's leaving out. So we're gonna get right into it here, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks for hopping in. But
I don't
all
know
right, Glenn.
why. First of all, I don't know why John and Joe Ortiz even sit up at the table with Eric DeCosta.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
like, we don't
people
want to
feel
hear from you guys.
obligated. No, we hear enough. First of all, we hear enough from John.
Yeah.
I get maybe Joe Ortiz, but really anything that he's going to say, Eric is already aware of and could speak on. So I'm not. I feel like people just feel obligated to include those two,
Yeah,
but
to
really
ask the
everyone
questions,
just
yeah.
wants to ask Eric questions.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good point because there's a certain obligation.
I thought John
to
was
that.
going to fall asleep. He looked tired, man. He looked like he's been studying a lot of tape.
Well, I tell you what, he doesn't miss days at the gym. You saw him next to Matt Rule in that picture?
Dude is.
And did you see Rule? Man, how sloppy does that guy look?
Looks like me.
Yeah, right, dude. He wishes, dude. Shoot. Man, that was embarrassing. Anyway.
All right, let's get into it.
We
because...
missed y'all too.
Yeah.
Too. And who else mentions that? Don, we haven't seen you in a minute, bro.
Is Don in here? My man.
Don, I don't know if you know this, but we'll be in a studio here soon. And eventually we're going to be on some live events. We know you're local, my man. Come on down.
Yep. Absolutely. So let's get into it, Jimbo, because I made a few bullet points, and it's just in chronological order. So we're not saving anything in particular. We're just talking as it was brought up in the presser. So I want to talk right off the break about our first bullet here. And basically my note was that Eric says he's optimistic but unsure about Ronnie Stanley's health and status currently. He says the team has a responsibility to address the tackle position. And of course, he mentioned Morgan Moses, the addition there, and the fact that Juwan James is still, is with the team and has been with the team since last season, but also said that they have a responsibility to continue to address the tackle position. So is it safe to say, like, if you're Eric DeCosta, Jimbo, are you treating Ronnie Stanley as if you can't count on him at all, and that him being back would be a
like a
bonus,
cherry on top?
Or
yeah.
Because if that's the case, then why are we not saying that it's obvious and clear that we're going left tackle in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, you put me on the spot here, Glenn. I feel like Eric DeCosta. I'm gonna start losing my hair.
Exactly.
I'm gonna start losing my hair, dude. No, but no, honestly.
Can you do the accent?
Man, I should be able to because Eric's from Maine.
Dude, you got it in your blood, man.
I know. Jeez, a whiz. My family would be embarrassed. But I guess if I had to answer your question, I would say that they're cautiously optimistic and that I believe that the tackle position is the second most likely position that goes in the first round. And he's not, I think outside defensive line. And the reason I think that, of course, that the defensive line is more likely is really about how the board will fall than as far as need goes. So, I mean, you guys can see it here. Jeff always does a great job of quoting Eric exactly. But so I guess to answer your question, Glenn, I mean, he's not going to come out and say it, but he did mention some other guys. One thing I thought was interesting in that conversation, he talked about Morgan as a reason they signed, like, as Morgan was a contingency plan almost. And I know he's
Yeah.
played a little bit of left, right? Like, I
As
think
far
in
as I know, I
Washington, he
mean,
played a tiny bit of left, didn't he?
I don't know of any in Washington. Maybe a little bit with um
The
gosh,
Jets?
yeah, the Jets where he was last year, but I don't even think that. I
Right.
think you'd be hard pressed to find any snaps from Morgan at left tackle.
But that's definitely, to me, not something we want to do again, right? Like, get a guy that plays right and then switch him left. Now, we did that last year and he ended up playing left, but Alejandro didn't look great at right before he went back to left, which was his natural position. So, yeah, I think they're just seeing Ronnie as a cherry on top, and I think
Mm.
that it's
That's
neck and
scary
neck.
though. I mean,
It
that scares
is.
the hell out of me because I see a lot of other holes which we're going to get into,
Mhm.
and obviously first round is the best opportunity to fill that hole with a day one starter, and I'm looking at it, I'm looking at quite a few positions, and I'm hopeful. I was hopeful that left tackle wasn't one of them because, like you mentioned, every team seems like they need a tackle, especially if you're picking in the upper part of the draft. So
Mhm.
there's likely going to be a run at the tackles that are the most likely day one starter. So man, at 14, I don't know if that's a good spot to get a starting left tackle.
Right, you get like a 1B guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who's maybe a reach, maybe not a reach. But I'll tell you what, we talked about this guy before, but the kid out of, what is it, Northern Iowa, Trevor
Oh,
is his first name, right?
Penning, Trevor Penning.
Penning,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
He'd be one to keep your eye on, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah, but I mean, at that man, it's just like, is that the
right.
value you want to go there? Or do you want to go
Because
maybe an
there's so many
edge
other
or a
holes.
corner? Yeah,
Right. That's the
exactly.
tough part. And so it's a great point. I think we're gonna get into that as well. But yeah, there's so many holes. There's so much writing on this draft. You would hate to have to use your highest valued pick with a player that is one of your highest paid players and he's just injured.
Exactly.
So,
It's a bit of a nightmare position for them, honestly, when it comes to Ronnie and what they really have
well,
there. It's kind of,
Glenn, they got rid of your favorite player.
who's that?
Big Slow.
Oh yeah, my favorite player. They had no choice but to get rid of that baby. Um, anyway, all right. So that's obviously one big thing that came out of this is that they're still quote unquote unsure. I mean, he says he's unsure about the health of Ronnie. I hope they have some idea. I mean,
Yeah.
unsure is
Yeah.
scary to hear.
Yeah, I think they're trying to, it's one of those things where perfect example. When my son goes down at night to sleep, my wife will be like, he's asleep. And I'm like, don't you say anything yet because he's
Yeah,
going to wake up. Don't you jinx it now. Right. Like, I think it's one of those things where Ronnie's like riding the bike, doing his thing. And Eric's like, I'm not looking. Not looking. I'm going to act like he doesn't exist till he's on the field and playing. And after one game, right? Like, then I'll recognize that Ronnie's back. But until then, he ain't back.
yeah.
But let me ask you this, Glenn, in regards to this conversation.
Mhm.
Where, after hearing Eric, based on wherever you had the likelihood of left tackle being drafted, like what I mean by in a list is highest likelihood of going in the first round. Wherever you had that position, did it move up? Did it move down? Did it stay the same in your mind?
Part of me, it's weird because I have this internal battle going on. Like, if I just look at the at what's said, then I got to say that tackle has jumped up in my list of priorities. However, there's a part of me that's going, inside is like, but what if Ronnie's back? Then
Mm-hmm.
we can use that pick on this spot and we can use it to grab this guy. But I don't know. I'm just so torn here, Jimbo. I mean, it's definitely going up, but I don't want to see the Ravens need
Yeah,
to take a guy at left tackle in the first round because that means they can't take an edge or they can't take,
it's not an
so,
ideal situation.
no, absolutely not. And look, there's only one first round pick as it stands right now, and they need at least I'm thinking at least 3 to 4 big time starters in this draft, and I don't know if you can get a starting left tackle outside of the first round. I mean, they did it with Orlando, but they did it at the right tackle spot. Can they do it at the left tackle spot outside of the first round? I don't know
Doesn't
about that.
happen very often.
No, not day one.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. So yeah,
Mm.
that's going to be interesting to follow. But another position switching to the other side of the ball that Eric was asked about, which I thought he was surprisingly candid on, and that's the cornerback position. Eric admitted he's concerned about the cornerback, excuse me, depth after last year's injuries. I think DK's got got a good old tweet for us here. DK acknowledged that the team is very concerned about its cornerback depth. And I think it's important that that's in quotes because those are direct words from Eric. There's no hyperbole there. So what was your take on that, Glenn? Because to me, my initial thoughts were like, all right, like I'm concerned. I recognize that there's a need. However, I don't know if I'm very concerned because at the end of the day, if we just stay healthy, we have the horses where like for me at edge, I don't know if we have the horses in the stable, even if we're healthy. So I distinguish them a bit differently in my mind. What's your thought on his comments there?
Yeah, I think that it's obviously, he didn't want to say that he feels great about the first two guys because, they're still recovering from an injury. I think that's one of those knock on wood type things you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But he kind of made it sound like he feels really good about those two guys. But if you look at the list of guys after them, Jimbo, you're talking Kevon Seymour, Kevin Tolliver, Robert Jackson, and Iman Marshall. I mean, that after I read you those names, can you clearly see why he said that he's very concerned about their depth? Because even if both of those, so let's say Humphrey and Peters are healthy, I mean, who do you feel great about as your third guy? I mean, I think you feel, Brandon Stevens showed that he can play some slot, and you got some safeties that could drop down and play some slot. Khalil Dorsey maybe can come back and can make
seemed slow last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so it's like, even if those guys stay healthy in this day and age, it's at least a nickel you're out there. And so at least you got three corners on the field. And most of the time, a lot of times you'll have four. So I don't feel good about anybody past Peters and Humphrey. And that's if Peters and Humphrey are, healthy all season. So yeah, I feel a little, but let me say this, Jimbo, I don't feel, and this might, I might get a disagreement from you or the fans. I don't think this is a first round issue. I think they addressed the cornerback position later in the draft.
And that's really the question, right? Like that's exactly honestly what I was thinking in my mind when I heard it. I was like, all right, Eric, like I'm concerned as well, but I agree with you. I don't know if it's a first round issue. And I don't know how much more capital Eric can get away with dedicating to one position group, to be honest. Right? Like there might be people with pitchforks and torches and like, dude, if we spend another dollar on the defensive backfield and we have patchwork up front, because what makes the defensive backfield good?
Well,
pressure on the quarterback.
Well, it makes them better. Yeah. No
you know what I mean? So, right.
But,
so, I mean,
we don't have that either.
Right. So, you know what I mean? There's going to be this never ending battle. And to me, this is just my opinion. We've talked about this before. Cornerbacks, a Deion Sanders will never exist again, not because the guys aren't as athletic or as good. The rule changes are different. The rule changes are set up to where it's the longest it takes to lose because corners can't win anymore. They just take longer to lose. You know what I'm saying?
Way to look at it, but
like
yeah,
it's just a losing proposition. It's just whoever withholds the longest.
Yeah,
that's kind of the way it goes. So, like, at what point do you say, okay, we've invested, we've thrown the kitchen sink at this. We need to, like you said, let's do something else in the first round, maybe the second round, or something, right? But I realize it's a concern. I don't know if maybe in my mind I'm as concerned about it as other positions.
Well, I think the question is if they decide to. So another thing that came out of it, and I guess we can kind of start talking about that now, even though it's a later bullet, is they talked about the role that the focus on injuries and he mentioned. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, Eric DeCosta said that they have always been conservative when it comes to the injury history of a potential draft pick. They feel that if a guy misses practice and misses games in college, then oftentimes that translates and they do so in the NFL as well. So with that being said, I know a lot of people like Derek Stingley out of LSU who had the monster freshman season and then had some injury issues in his following years. To me, that crosses him off the board, right? I mean, I guess it doesn't completely cross him, but it certainly knocks his draft stock in the eyes of the Ravens if you have injury concerns. So, like, it's not just that they all invested all this money into their corners. They have just signed their safety to a long-term deal. It's not just what they've already invested in there. It's also, is there a guy there who would be worthy of the 14th pick enough to turn in that card because I have a feeling that Sauce Gardner is going to be gone, and I think that maybe Stingley, but if he is there, would the Ravens even pull the trigger given his history?
Yeah, that's a great point. After Eric's comments, that might have disqualified him from the list, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, that's an interesting conversation to have. But certainly, like you said, when you read the depth, it makes you,
it's bad.
yeah,
It's not like last year where we had Tavon, we had Jimmy Smith.
right.
We had some guys you feel really good about after the first two.
Did Jimmy ever officially retire?
No, it's right now. He's still. Yeah, I have a sneaky feeling he's going to be back. But even if he's back, I mean, what does that
Yeah,
even
he
do
was
to
a
change
shell
your
of
mind?
himself last year, and the snap count went down drastically. And can he stay healthy?
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it makes me feel all right. He's probably better than all those other
Better,
guys.
yeah, better. But still, at the end of the season, what are you expecting to get out of him in weeks, 16 and on?
Yeah. So I think I agree with you. I think we're in the same place. Like, it's definitely a need first half of the draft, but I don't know if it's a round 1, round 2 type need, right? And I know we're not drafting for need. Eric will say that over and over again. We're drafting for best player available and Ravens type fit, et cetera, et cetera. But we all know that he's taken the most wide receivers, since his time as a GM for a reason. There's a need, right? So
Yeah,
it's just about where he takes that
he'll definitely take a
cornerback.
corner in this draft, at
Oh
least
yeah,
one, no doubt.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's all right, let's move on then. Let's talk about it. They finally asked him about this new strategy that other teams are using, and of course, the Rams made it most famous by winning the Super Bowl using that strategy, where they trade away a lot of their top end draft picks, and then
Mm-hmm.
they also find creative ways to sign and trade for big time star players. Some in the prime of their career, others to in the twilight of their career, and they turned it into a Super Bowl. So they were asked about that, and basically Eric DaCosta, I like that he thought about it. He admitted that the last 3 months he's thought more about that strategy than he had before because of the exact. DK says it well. The F the pick strategy. I think that. I like that he at least reevaluated their stance, but was just really, it really was reinforced that is ultimately the draft is the foundation of what they do, is what his quote was. So they're going to continue to try and accumulate draft picks throughout the draft in the top end, the middle, and even the back end to continue to build a roster that they think is competitive each and every season and doesn't have those peaks and valleys that a lot of other franchises suffer through.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really what it's about. It's about stability. It's about understanding, what your financial capabilities are. And I think the Ravens feel like it's more likely that they hit on a pick or a multitude of picks than it is that they give up those picks and that player being worth it. Right? Like, that's the equation they do in their mind. Like, no,
Yeah.
like, and I realize that's a simple equation, but at the end of the day, their process is their process. I think it's been proven out time over time over time. I mean, just look at the picks you put on the list from the beginning of the franchise. And it wasn't like, obviously Ozzie Newsome is the wizard, but Eric has been his right hand since forever, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Eric's been running the draft. Obviously, Ozzie has had the last word for a long time, and now Eric does, but Eric has been his main influencer in the draft for an extended period of time. So, he deserves credit for those names as well. So, yeah, there we go. Eric DaCosta, it sounds crazy to say this, but every pick you bring in, you expect to play. You don't draft a guy. Yeah, I remember this. This was interesting. You don't draft a guy if you don't think he can help your team. That's just a bad mentality. Does the data back that up? Probably not, but that's what we expect. And so, yeah, I mean, Eric, that was kind of what he talked about today, is how they can improve the amount of guys that they draft and then play and putting them in good situations. And one of the things I thought was telling, Glenn, is he said at some point you got to let the young guys play. Now I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he basically said that in a different form of words. And he said, I think our guys now have a tremendous opportunity. And I think of the wide
Mm-hmm.
receiver class. I think of some of the young guys up front on the interior of the defensive line. I even think of some guys up front on the interior of the offensive line. All these guys have tremendous opportunity in front of them because of the amount of picks that we've had relatively early on in the draft. So it
Mm-hmm.
just speaks to that strategy that the Ravens have.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you touched on it. He said, he was that was when he was really asked about what he's learned over his first few
Yeah.
years as being the final, decision maker, and he talked about he's his own worst critic. So there's certainly things he'd do different, but he's proud of what they've done in his first few years as the final say. And he did mention, that the fact that a player's success, there's a lot of things that go into a player's success. It could be poor evaluation by the team, and they put a guy in a position where he's just not able to succeed because of poor evaluation. It could be just a bunch of guys in front of him where the opportunity isn't there because an excellent and great player is already in his spot. And as good as he is, he's just not good enough to unseat him. There's salary cap implications. So, but all I heard was, Jimbo, is that it's time for Broderick Washington to step up. It's time for Justin Metabike to step the hell up. It's going to be time for all them damn guards that we drafted to start stepping the hell up, like Ben Powers, like Benjamin Cleveland, like Tyree
Any other
Phillips.
Ben you can think of that's in the NFL and plays offensive line?
Like, it's time for these young guys. They've had a couple years to learn their craft, and most of the time in the practice field. But now there's no one in front of them. There's no Brandon Williams here right now. There's no Calais Campbell in the building right now. So those spots are up and for the taking. And so I don't know if that's just them saying that to themselves to make themselves feel better, or if they really believe that this is their time to shine and it's time for these young guys to maybe make a name for themselves instead of living in the shadows of these other guys.
Yeah, no, there's so many things that are coming to a crossroads this year. And he has to hit on this draft, and he's got to be feeling the pressure, the entire front office for sure. It's really going to be hit. Think about Lamar's deal. Think about all the weight on this draft. Think about, like you said, all these young guys coming up that they've invested a lot in draft picks and time. It's a lot coming to a head here that's going to be interesting. So just like you said here, you guys can see what Eric said, and of course I we aspire to do better, and a lot of that falls on me. It's funny because he sounds like a guy that has been leading up a team that's been in the dumps for a while, but since Eric's been here, our record has been ridiculously good. Since he's been here, obviously, but since he's been the GM. So appreciate that he's not comparing himself to his peers, and it sounds like he's really comparing himself to himself.
Well, I mean, look, let's just call it what it is, Jimbo. What they just didn't have the heart to ask him about it or to talk about it. But really what it was is that 1 year, right? He had his first year. If you just look at his 2019 season, his 2019 draft class, you're talking Marquise Brown, Snacks Ferguson, Miles Boykin, Justice Hill, Ben Powers, Iman Marshall, Dalen Mack, and Trace. Just brought up that draft alone, because if you look at the other drafts, there's certainly places and people to be proud of in your draft class. But that first year, I mean, outside of Marquise Brown, duds. And
the hard thing about
Powers is who you're most proud of.
Yeah, and the hard thing about that is, even though Marquise is doing well, he'll always be compared to his peers in that draft class, who some are just absolutely ridiculous, right? So that's the tough part. Even though he's the shiny object based on his production, it's still like, well, DK Metcalf is a lot better, right? Like, this is what a lot of people will say.
Yeah, among others.
Yeah, exactly. The list is definitely there and substantial. So I'm excited to talk about this next topic.
Yeah.
So we got to get into this, right? For sure. And Bob Pierney was commenting about this. I don't know if you saw that at the beginning of the show.
No, I missed it.
Yeah, he was saying that we should go get a center. So interesting that you bring that up, old Mr. Pierney. Eric DeCosta today said that the center has very few players, the draft as far as the center goes, very few players each year, only around 4 to 5 true centers. So really what it's about is, and what he's seen other teams do, is he talked about moving guys from other positions. Right, here we go. So Eric DeCosta said the center position is hard to fill through the draft because when you look at the board, there aren't many true high caliber centers. Many are converted from other positions. That said, he likes 4 to 5 centers they like that are non-first rounders.
I think Sarah missed the biggest part of that.
She did. Yeah, yeah. So go ahead, Glenn. I agree with you 100% because we both talked about this pre-show.
Yeah, the biggest quote I got out of that is right after he said that. He said, they want big guys everywhere on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Big guys.
So they're not
So
hiring me.
they're not hiring you, and I don't think Tyler Linderbaum's coming to Baltimore. When you
No.
consider he played at about 285, 290.
Soaking, wringing wet.
Yeah, and got up to 294 for the combine because he knew that he had to put on a couple
Yeah,
couple pounds.
he filled his undies with rolls of quarters.
Yeah, exactly. So what that tells me is they're not taking an undersized center at the first round, or that this is a classic misdirection from Eric DeCosta, and that they are definitely taking Tyler Linderbaum. So it's either there's no chance they're taking him, or they're definitely taking him. I don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's the Liars Lunch in, because this could be an absolute smokescreen. And Eric really has this kid graded high, or like you said, him just speaking the truth and just saying it like it is, right?
Yep.
I will say in this instance, Glenn, based on the other guys at the position, think about the interior offensive lineman they drafted last year. He ain't anywhere close to 200 pounds.
No.
I mean, yeah. So
He hasn't been 200 pounds since he was 3.
seriously, I mean, probably in middle school, he probably broke 200. I mean, he's 360.
Yeah.
Like, dude is ridiculous. So,
Yeah.
if you guys don't know, we're referring to Ben Cleveland, right? So, all that said, I think he's being truthful here. What do you think?
I think he's being truthful too. I mean, just look at who he's drafted. Like you said, I mean, look at the all the guys he's drafted since taking over. The one thing they have in common is that they're big guys. And so, although Tyler obviously plays bigger than he is and uses his leverage to move bigger guys, I would be stunned. But I guess I shouldn't say that because, I mean, it's classic misdirection. I mean, this is, man, that's why you can't read into too much. You got to kind of pick through the weeds. But I feel like he mistakenly slipped up and said that. So I'm going to say that Tyler Linderbaum is off the board in the first round.
I think I'm with you there as well. Now, last thing, do you think it was interesting that not one time did the reporters or Eric DeCosta or anyone else say the name Bradley Bozeman?
A little bit that they didn't bring it up.
Like he's now Voldemort?
Yeah, like at least ask him what happened. I mean, he may not answer. He may give some sort of a non-answer, but at least answer. I mean,
well, and not only that, I thought it was funny when he was talking about the success they've had with taking guys in later rounds at the position. Now, I know part of that answer was transitioning guys, but not the entire answer. He had plenty of within the question. You know, he was talking about the success of getting guys later to play at center.
He could have brought him up
easy. And he decided not to. I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're obviously, got to be bitter about it. There has to be something going on when they signed him for that cheap of money down in Carolina. But he did, like you said, he did mention about finding tackles late and moving them to center like he did with Ryan Jensen and Patrick McCary. So, hey, I think that's what we're looking for at the center position. I think it's going to be likely a bigger guy who used to play tackle that doesn't, look like he can make it there. And he's going to transition to the center position and see what he's got. And it's McCary's job until that guy's ready.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, he's probably a little too long. I don't know if you can be too long at that position, right? But like, even Phillips, like if they realize he's not going to make it on the outside, like, do you give him a shot to see if he can do it there? Who knows?
Maybe.
I just his thought came or his
the problem with him is that
he's young in football.
Yeah, he's young in football, and I think they got high hopes for him as a guard. So you got to give him as many reps as you can somewhere. But yeah, I mean,
I feel like you got to kind of like run point. It's like the point guard in basketball, in my opinion, in a lot of situations, and so you got to be very experienced, right, at that position as well. But the other thing I want to mention just really quickly on the center as well is that I've noticed a lot of people in the chat saying that McCary is our center next year. Just because John said he's our center for now, to me means nothing.
Right.
It means extremely
That's just where he is right now when we're not playing football for months.
Right. It's like if you had to pencil him in and you're at a table, you're at dinner and you got a ketchup packet and a mustard packet and a mayonnaise packet. McCary's the mustard packet playing center. That's about as relevant as it is.
Yeah, it's really for depth chart purposes. But I will say this, if they had to line up today and play, he'd be their center. I think
for sure.
Tristan Colon.
Right, but I guess what I mean is that there's no way does that mean they're shutting the door on drafting a guy high, drafting a guy at all, or looking at bringing in a free agent. No way. They're
Right.
definitely still evaluating all possibilities.
Definitely. Yeah, 100% agree. And as far as, I see that Treader's still being brought up, and I would have no problem with him bringing in Treader. The question is does he fit the offense, because he's mainly been in that zone scheme that the Browns run, that the Bengals run, that the Niners run, and it's quite a bit different than what the Ravens run. He could still be, looking to hold out. He could be like Justin Houston was, where he just didn't really feel like doing all the offseason stuff, so he decided to sign late. Who knows what's going on with Treader, but he hasn't signed anywhere yet, so I wouldn't be too down on the Ravens' possibilities of possibly bringing him in. But yeah, so I want to talk about the next one, because I thought this next point was kind of interesting, Jimbo.
Yeah.
They asked Eric about the stockpile of draft picks and what flexibility does that bring to the draft. And he, of course, answered in a hilarious way, in that he said that the flexibility brings them the ability to move up, but also to move back if they wanted to. Because oftentimes, if a team is looking to either move up to your spot, but they may not have a combination of picks that matches up with your picks to where it can make sense. But with having 5 fourth rounders, you can certainly do a lot to either move up or to move back. And then he said the famous line of, and I'm not sure if we have it, I don't think we do, but of we can end up with more than 10 picks, or we can end up with less than 10 picks. And then John on the side is like, or we could do 10. Like, you just
Thanks,
said,
guys.
you did the whole the scarecrow from what's it called? The classic movie, the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin
Oh
Man.
my gosh. Holy crap. DK, save us. What movie is this? Dorothy.
The Wicked Witch.
What's the name of the movie? Oh my gosh.
What's wrong with
and the
us?
red shoes.
Remember how the Scarecrow goes
Wizard
like
of
this?
Oz.
Yes,
Wizard of Oz. Yes.
He did the Scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz. He went like this when asked which direction to go. I think that was just a complete non-answer, but I 100%, there he goes. Eric DaCosta on the possibility of trading up or trading down. He said, right now we have 10 picks. I would say there's a strong possibility we'll either have more than 10 picks or less than 10 picks when it's all said and done.
Thanks,
Well,
Eric.
thanks a lot, man. I mean, he gave us if between A or B, I can guarantee you this, it'll either be A or B.
Now, let me ask you this, Glenn. Where's your money? Do they go up or do they go down? Like, do they make?
I think that they don't go up with the 14th pick, but I think that they do. I think that they get 2 second rounders this year.
All right.
So I don't think there's 2 first rounders because of the money and what that 5th year looks like. I think they'd be concerned of taking on a second 5th year guy in the same year. That would mean 2 pretty big 5th year options.
And back-to-back years, right? We have, you know what I mean? It would be 2 last year and then 2 this year. So in subsequent years, they'd have 4 contracts to deal with.
Exactly. So I think it's they will move up, but I think it's more likely in the 2nd or 3rd round that they do so.
You see Herb Jones, Narnia.
I did see the first one. I did see the first Narnia.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I think that what's your thought? Like, what do you think they do? Do they move up? Do they stay flat?
So I'm going with a hunch here. I think they're going to move up. I think they're going to move up in the first round. I think the Baltimore Ravens end up in the top 10, number 10, but whoever's at 10, who's at 10 right now might not be a good trade candidate. I think the Baltimore Ravens move up 4 spots.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that the question is, when do the quarterbacks start going?
Yep.
And
we got to talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, we might as well get into it.
Let me see here. We got it down as a note. Joe Ortiz's comments about the kid out of Liberty.
I didn't put it up, but I did hear it. Because he just kind of threw it in as a joke. At least that's how I took it. Did he though?
Look, my mom always says, Glenn, there's a little truth in every joke.
I mean, well, let's put it this way. They weren't asked about the quarterback room. Joe Ortiz jokingly brought it up. And here, Jeff Zrebick from The Athletic tweeted, he said, DaCosta and Ortiz joked about how we should be talking up the quarterbacks more. So more of them go before 14. That's why he brought it up. But he said Joe Ortiz did say that there are starting quarterbacks in this class and felt that the quarterback class is being underestimated. And that could always be the case. There isn't, you won't see many drafts when there's no quarterbacks discussed in the top 5. So it is quite rare. But there's also no denying that Malik Willis could turn out to be the best quarterback we've seen in the last 5 years. And that there's no doubt that Kenny Pickett could turn out to be a Pro Bowler. We don't know what's going on. But there is no chance, Jimbo, and I'll say it again, there is no damn chance that the Ravens bring in any quarterback at any point in this draft, early or late. No chance.
Okay, so if Malik, after all those glowing words from Joe Ortiz, if Malik is sitting there at 14
if Malik's sitting there at 45, we ain't taking him.
So is this at all I mean, Lamar, honestly, I don't even think Lamar watches this. In fact,
he watches this.
Yeah, he watches us.
Of course.
I'm talking about this as in the Liars Luncheon. I don't think he really.
Hell no.
But is there any way that they're like, this is a message to Lamar? Like, dude, we're not afraid to pull the trigger.
No, don't start that shit, Jimbo. Don't.
But you have to ask the question. It doesn't mean I think that's
will
the
Will
answer.
Smith right through this screen.
And I'll just eat it and keep talking, just like Chris Rock, dude.
You'd be like, Glenn Martin just smacked the shit out of me.
That was the best day in the history of television. That's right. I tell you what, I guess what I'm saying is that it doesn't mean that I believe it or not, but we have to talk about it because he said it.
But he said it because he wants to hype up the position so more quarterbacks are taken to push better players down.
So there's zero chance that this was just a passive-aggressive message to Lamar, like, hey, we really like Malik.
0 point. First of all, it was Joe Ortiz who brought it up. You're not talking Eric DeCosta brought it up. You're talking the scout brought it up.
He's not the – I mean, he is – come on.
It's like Black Daniel said, keep Lamar's name out your mouth.
Hey, look, all I'm saying is that he didn't have to bring up Malik. He didn't have to bring up names. He could have stopped. He could have stopped right with that statement.
You're one DK side eye towards me for me coming to your house right now. If I see DK side eye in the waiting room, I'm coming over there.
But my point is, you got to discuss it. You can't. I think I agree with you guys as well, but I don't think it's fair to say that the only reason they did this was a joke or to pump up these guys' value.
What reason do you honestly think that they brought it up?
Yeah, they need Lamar to sign the dang dotted line already, because if not, the Ravens are going to get taken for a trip by Lamar Jackson, dude. He is going to every single look. The bullies in school that in the movies, they turn the kids upside down and they shake them and all their money falls out. That's what Lamar, he's going to walk up to Bishotti. He's going to grab him. He's going to turn him upside down and he's going to shake him for all his money. All of it.
That is okay, Jimbo, because like Bishotti said, having no quarterback sucks. And guess what? As soon as Lamar gets paid, the next guy will get paid more than Lamar, and the next guy will get paid more than him. So,
but maybe Ortiz is like, Bishotti, you don't got to pay him. This Malik kid has got it.
No. Let me tell you something. Malik Willis, I hope he has a great career. He ain't no damn Lamar Jackson.
I agree with you. It's not that I don't, but it's also not fair to say that no one is talking about this.
No, and they shouldn't, and we shouldn't.
I'm just saying. I also got to say something else, Glenn. Look, y'all got to start spelling Glenn's name right. It's on the screen, bro.
Hey, I'm pretty sure Brad still misspells my name. Shout out to intern Brad, who's I'm pretty sure still, but does an incredible job with helping us out with social media and all that he does. Yes. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he still spells my name wrong. But I don't think
that it is. My point is that I think it's really unfair to say that there's no way that there isn't a discussion being had. You have to. You have an obligation as a team to turn over every rock. You have to look at every single prospect.
Well, I believe that they're evaluating due diligence, but I don't think there's any chance that a quarterback is brought in, not even in the 6th round. DK says next year the quarterback jokes start to draw the sweats. Yes, DK. If this was next year and the deal still wasn't signed and we're talking franchise tags, then it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't think it's fair to just put it to bed. We've seen crazier things. I'm tucking it
in, and I'm reading it A Night Story. All right.
Enough.
Let me get my book out, my bifocals on. I'm reading a bedtime story to this thing. I'm putting it right to bed.
Fair enough, but he's not under contract for more than this year.
You watch your mouth. You watch your mouth. Before I smack the shit.
I don't understand how it's so far. Like,
Because I don't want to live in a reality where Lamar Jackson does not sign a long-term extension with the Ravens.
I 100%. Nor do I. That's not my point.
I don't even want to consider it.
I don't either. I like. Why is it that me saying this means that I want this or believe this will happen?
You're trying to make it real up here, Jimbo.
No, I'm not. But to put your head in the sand and say there's no way the fact that Lamar is not under contract doesn't have anything to do with the conversations that they're having, I think is naive.
You're right. I think that there is, but I think that it's far too
Josh
premature.
Dobbs ain't doing it.
It's far too premature. If they were looking to eventually have to replace Lamar Jackson, that would be after the franchise tags are exhausted, in my opinion. So we're talking at least 3 years. And that's the worst case scenario.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just saying that it
Yolanda, don't leave. Yolanda said if Lamar leaves, she's going with him. What?
Oh,
man.
Yeah. Well, what can we do about that?
You gonna be a Dolphins fan?
A Patriots fan? I don't know. Any team that we don't. A Steelers fan?
Yeah, but that's where he's gonna go, right? If he does leave, it's gonna be Miami.
Yeah, for sure. To that stacked team. He's gonna pop in right there and throw to Tyreek Hill and Waddle. My gosh, and Marquise will follow him. Oh my! Could you imagine that wide receiver group?
Could you quit it? Quit it, Jimbo. Quit it. Let's
anyway,
move on.
Right, let's move on.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, shout out to Harry. Harry Ing in the building. Stop ghost watching button. Shout out. That's right. Nana, I'm not trying to start problems, but I do feel like I feel like we have an obligation here on this show to look at the Ravens from every single angle. It is absolutely fair and justifiable to say that the conversations they have are different because Lamar is obligated to play for this team for one more year. It is different than if he had a long-term deal in hand.
Yeah, but you say that like they can't and they wouldn't franchise him if need be.
Yeah, that's true, but that's still another 1-year deal and then a 1-year deal. Like, who wants a rental? Like, let's get married.
I don't think he wants to be a rental. Look, hey, let's not forget what Lamar said in that tweet, okay? He loves his Ravens.
I'm absolutely. I know he does. But my point is that it isn't about Lamar. It's about Eric and the team having to face. Well,
you got to do your due diligence. I'm sure that they did their scouting and they did their evaluation on all the quarterbacks, just like they always do. But I don't think I don't even think there's a quarterback on their board this year. Okay.
Fair enough. Just
take them all and throw them in the garbage.
All right. I agree. It's not that I disagree, but I do think conversations are had. All right.
All right. Well, let's talk about this next one because
nor Glenn nor myself like to lose arguments. If you guys haven't noticed, I had to get the last word.
I've never lost an argument actually in my entire life.
I think you just did. You just did lose an argument.
Let's ask the comment section.
I think we were arguing two different things. All right, on to the next.
All right. Well,
got the last word in. Go.
Man, I'm gonna pray for your wife. So when asked about the free agency period, I mean, he was asked a few things about it, and was asked, of course, about the recent disappointment with Bobby Wagner, and he talked about how it's at least it seemed to me like he was saying that now the focus is on the draft, and that's now in the forefront of their minds, and that they're now going to wait until after the draft is over and pursue in that third and fourth wave of free agency. And he referenced a guy like Darryl Smith, who wasn't signed until I think he mentioned it was sometime in May. Here we go. Asked about missing out on Jonas Schaefer, by the way, from the Baltimore Sun tweeted, asked about missing out on Bobby Wagner. Eric DeCosta indicates that the Ravens are still shopping for value. He points to linebacker Darryl Smith, who didn't sign until June. So it was June, not May. He said there will be some Darryl Smiths on the team this year, so we'll continue to address that. So that's it looks like don't be on Twitter like we were for Bobby Wagner news, checking it every 30 seconds to see if he had made a decision. Don't check any of that until after the draft because there ain't no Ravens. The Ravens ain't signing nobody until this draft's over. And because what they'll do is they'll sign their draft picks. They'll wait for other teams to draft players, and then they'll cut aging veterans at those same positions because they just replaced them with younger, cheaper talent. And then they'll swoop in and grab a Darryl Smith-like player, probably at the same position that Darryl Smith took or played, because obviously they wanted to upgrade the linebacker position with Bobby Wagner, so I don't think that that's just gone away.
Right.
but it looks like it's going to be some cap casualties and some post-draft cuts after they replace the vets with younger talent.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, if I'm not mistaken, also has to do with the formula for the comp picks, right? Like, isn't the deadline surrounding the draft where now we sign these guys post draft and it doesn't count against the comp pick formula? DK shaking his head yes, so I'm going to trust
Yes, I would
trust in
trust
DK
DK too.
that is the case. So that's another reason for it, right? The Ravens have the most comp picks since its inception. Asmodeus Stenoda says, I don't think the only person who feels that if Lamar leaves, I don't think I'm the only person who feels that if Lamar leaves and we keep Harbs, this entire front office should be fired. Also for your Big Mac. Fair enough. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I feel like the entire front office should be fired, but
I think Lamar loves Coach Harbaugh.
100%. I think
He loves him, and I think he wants him to continue to be his coach for as long as possible.
100%.
I think they have a great relationship. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they have a great trusting, respecting relationship.
Remember when he was talking about him on the shop?
Yeah.
Talking about Coach?
Talking about that little YouTube channel? The shop, right?
Yeah, that tiny little barely known.
Yeah.
No, he I mean, just watch the clip of him talking Harbs. It seems like he loves him. And speaking of Harbs, Eric DeCosta called Harbaugh the best head coach in the league.
He ain't lying.
So obviously Eric loves him. And then they also asked Harbaugh about his feelings on his contract extension. Of course, recently signed that 3-year extension. He said he felt grateful and motivated. So not resting on his laurels. Says he's motivated now just as much as ever to put a great team on the field and continue to compete for championships. So I'm excited that he's still here. I know that there's a lot of people who are not the biggest fans of Harbaugh, but I'm a big fan of Harbaugh.
100%.
Yeah. And if you want to tell me he's not the best coach in the league, that's fine. You could certainly give that to Belichick. You could argue that it's Andy Reid and Mike Tomlin.
Andy Reid and Harbs, they got the same amount of rings as last time I checked.
Yeah, I mean you could, but there's no argument in my opinion that he's a garbage coach. There's no argument that he's outside the top 10. I think you'd struggle to argue that he's outside the top 5.
Yeah, I think that if you think that about John Harbaugh, you have sore lack of information.
Yeah, exactly.
Just really dig into the information and watch, and you can see the outcomes of his coaching. So, 100% on all accounts there. No hesitation there, and I know they're good friends. So, shout out to John Harbaugh. But let's move on here.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say, it seems like there's he said that there's about 107 by the end of the process. Eric DeCosta said there'll be 170 to 195 draftable players on their board this year.
Yeah, Malik will be on the board.
It's interesting you say that because that's a much lower number than we typically hear from them. Usually it's 200. It's kind of a light list, and I think one of the big reasons why it's such a low number is because they've crossed every quarterback right off the list, and so that's a quick way to get that number down. But when you hear that the Ravens have all these picks, and then it I don't know, like what do you think this is kind of a draft where maybe this isn't the best draft to have a bunch of picks? Like, is that concerning?
No, I think he that was interesting to me too, because at the beginning they talked about how the guys with the COVID year, it added some depth to the draft. Right. So I think that overall, I also heard that this is a relatively deep draft. And that's kind of how, I mean, I feel like DraftPlex has kind of mentioned some of the same thing, not at every position, but relatively speaking, the draft as a whole, there's a lot of guys there. I think it's more about the Ravens having command based on where they're picking. So like they have 170 because there's not going to be too much of being at the mercy of others. Like you obviously got to wait for your pick, but they're in good positions in every round. Obviously in the 4th round, there's a lot of leverage the Ravens have here, a lot of levers they can pull to get the guy that they want. I think it's about their confidence level of getting the guys that they want, more than the number of guys that they like. Because at the end of the day, if you put 170 up there and you feel you're 100% sure you're going to have a swing at each one of them at the position you feel likely, then why keep adding more?
Yeah.
So anyway, Jonas said, same thing. You guys saw it up on the screen. I'm sure I'm sure you guys are literate, but if you're listening, I will read it if you're on the pod. Eric DeCosta says the Ravens have about 180 draftable players on their board. That total could go up or down over the next few weeks. DeCosta said that prospect pool is slightly smaller than those in previous years. And like you said, Glenn, I think the final number that he landed on was 170. He said around 170. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I think it's more about their confidence level of getting those guys based on where they're drafting.
Yeah, and it could also just be the fact of, or the lack of, I should say, top end quarterbacks is what's causing, this draft to look on the outside of being weak, when really it's because there's not that big quarterback at the top.
Yeah, but I think if you look positionally, I think there's some serious depth here.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, because
we need it. Lord knows we need it. If there wasn't, then why would Eric be setting up for this year? He talked about that. He's setting up for this year in the draft. So he has to believe that there's depth here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But and I hope so, because in years past, I feel like there's been less holes. Like, I feel like
this year's scary.
Yeah.
We're like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, and a lot of big-time veterans that have been kind of staples in the organization are gone, and we're relying, I think, a lot more on younger guys than we have in years past at key positions. It's like entire groups, it feels like. So, yeah, I'm just nervous about this draft. I just hope that they nail it. I mean, it just, if you look at their history, some years they really nail it. Other years, like 2019, it's not so hot. I mean, you look at what they did in the next year. So in 2019, I mentioned Marquise Brown, Jalen Ferguson, Miles Boyd, Justice Hill, Ben Powers, Iman Marshall, Dalen Mack, and Trace McSorley.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bad outside of Marquise Brown. It's really bad. But then the next year, it's kind of the opposite, because some people would say that their first round pick is the biggest underachiever of all of their 2020 picks, and Patrick Queen being number one. But J.K. Dobbins, number two. I don't think anyone's complaining there. Justin Metabike at number three. Devin Duvernay in the third round, who was an all-pro return man last year. Malik Harrison, look, I think I know there's a couple guys in the comments that had some pretty high hopes on him. And although he did shoot himself, he really, before that, or he got shot. He didn't shoot himself. He got shot. But even before that, he wasn't necessarily tearing it up on the field. And then Tyree Phillips after that, Bredesen, Broderick Washington, James Prochet in the 6th round, and then Geno Stone in the 7th round. Say what you want about Geno Stone, but the guy has made plays, and for a 7th round pick, he's made a hell of a name for himself for a 7th round pick.
100%, man. I that draft was an absolute home run, right? And that wine is aging well, not like milk, but much more like wine. So, yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't disagree, or I couldn't agree more with you. I think DK's got another tweet up here. I think it has to do with the depth of the draft, if I'm not mistaken. This really speaks to the defensive line. Eric DeCosta on rebuilding the defensive line. We have a lot of work to do, and Michael Pierce, of course, was one part. The Ravens see early and mid-round prospects who can come in right away and contribute. Look, Glenn, I'm not a draft expert, and that's why we have DraftPlex on, who is the most accurate drafter among draft experts. And if you guys go back and watch those shows, he spoke to this being the position where the Ravens can most likely get the best value at 14, because it sounds like we're going to be out of the bidding for the 1A guys, for the tackles, the corners, the safeties,
pass rushers.
Yeah, pass rushers.
Well, there's really only one safety, but yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to these guys, and when the run starts, and I think the Ravens are in solid position to do so. So it's going to be really interesting. We'll do a ton of mock drafts, but I don't see myself moving. I think that they go with a defensive lineman in the first round.
Yeah, it's certainly shaking out to be that way. You said it perfectly. There's a good chance that the tackle run happens. And so that they're not going to shoehorn in a guy because they're needy at tackle that doesn't really justify the 14th pick. And the same could be said. I mean, the run on edge rushers, I think, is going to be pretty big time too in the top 10. Well, all we can hope for, Jimbo, is that quarterback needy teams fall in love with a guy, because that's what we need. We need as many quarterbacks to go in the top 14 as possible, because then there is a shot of a Jordan Davis getting pushed down to the Ravens, because I think the Ravens at 14 have a good shot at their choice at at either of the guys from Georgia at being the centerpiece of their defense in the front line. But also I wouldn't be like if Kayvon Thibodeau starts to slide, that's like the type of guy that I could see him jumping up for. This is just such an intriguing draft. I mean, last year we kind of had a pretty good idea. Like we had a pretty good idea they were going wide receiver and edge, and it ended up being perfectly true. This year, I could see him going tackle, edge, interior. I could see him. I mean, corner. Like if one of those elite guys slip. I mean, there's legitimately 4 to 5 positions where you can make a solid case for them taking.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. This is the year where it is the hardest to predict what will happen early on in the draft. So it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, the Liars Luncheon today, there was a lot of information that we discussed, and it was absolutely a lot of fun. I think DK wanted to just briefly bring up this tweet that talks about what what Harb said in regards to his extension. Felt very great. He said, I felt very grateful and very motivated at the same time, end quote. That's great. We want a motivated John Harbaugh. Certainly, we want a guy that's like, proverbially speaking, fat and happy, right? Like we want a guy that's hungry and still has the dog in there and is ready to go after it. But I feel like we learned a lot, Glenn. I feel like we learned a lot from this, from the Liars Luncheon overall. I'm excited to see what happens. As a follow-up to this, we're gonna do some mock drafts and some breakdowns of some players and analysis and predictions and all the above. I'm excited to get to it, man.
No doubt. I can't wait. And also, we are inching closer to having our first show in the studio in downtown, beautiful Baltimore. We can't wait to get in there. Just have to finish, hanging some pictures on the walls, getting a few chairs in there. Got to decorate first and foremost. But we're getting a lot closer, and we absolutely can't wait. We're gonna have some guests in there. And I'm really excited to see what kind of set we come up with when it comes down to the studio. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, and you guys stay tuned because I think there's gonna be a really cool way for you guys to be able to participate in that. And you guys have been with us every step of the way, so we want you guys to be in there with us. I think we've come up with something that's pretty creative, and we'll talk about that next week. Little teaser.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys stay tuned. But let's give some shout outs real quick, Glenn. Yolanda B was super active tonight. Yolanda,
don't leave, Yolanda.
Don't leave. And look, Yolanda, I know that Glenn thinks otherwise, but I don't think Lamar Jackson is going anywhere. I don't think the Ravens are drafting anyone at quarterback. Lamar Jackson is going to be a Raven for a long time. So don't worry about it.
He's backpedaling.
No, I'm not backpedaling. I never said the Ravens going to draft anyone. I'm saying they're having conversations. Okay.
Let's see here. Dan Wald 80 says, give up our second and third
and 3/4
for first install. I'm assuming he means like first draft pick, a first rounder. So, give up our second and 3/4 for first rounder. I think first overall. That's what he meant to say. Wow. Well, I think you'd have to give up a lot more than that to get to the first overall.
You usually got to give up like your firstborn child and the fatted calf, right? Like,
yeah, you got to give up multiple years of first round picks, like the Niners did most recently to get Trey Lance. They had to give up,
that wasn't even first overall. That was 3, right? That was just to get up to 3.
Exactly. So, I mean,
think about what the Bears gave up just to move up 1 to get Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I mean, I tell you what, I would not be shocked at all to see the Ravens move up and get more picks. But I would be a little surprised to see him have 2 first rounders after just doing it last year and doing it, fairly recently in the Lamar year as well. So it seems like I don't know if they want to continue the trend of having multiple first round picks, meaning multiple 5th-year options.
Yeah, and you know what, guys, stay tuned because tomorrow what we're going to do is we're going to do a video on up and down potential draft partners the Ravens could have. So that'll definitely we'll talk about what it normally takes to get up or down and who they most likely would do business with based on the team needs and things like that. So Don C, another shout out, Ravens fan 101. Let's see who else we got in here. Dan Wald 80, obviously. Chico Lee, Nana.
Black Daniels has been in here a lot.
That's right, definitely. all you guys, silent observers, everyone, if you guys listen on the pod, everyone out there all over the world, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us tonight or this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're located. Shout out to DK for running the show in the background as always.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.